Please, let's take our seat. We want to commence proceedings at this conference. The Commissioner, Political Affairs of ECOWAS, the Executive Directors of Amandla Institute, the African Leadership Center, CODESRIA, officials of the ECOWAS Commission, distinguished participants, colleagues, friends of West Africa, good morning and welcome to this historic dialogue. Future-proofing regional integration in Africa as we commemorate ECOWAS at 50. On behalf of Amandla Institute, the African Leadership Center, CODESRIA, and ECOWAS Commission, I call this house to order and welcome you warmly. Can you look at your neighbor and welcome him or her in your local dialect? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, today's conversations invite us to reimagine integration, not as an abstract policy, but as a people-driven project for peace, prosperity, and progress. Let us open our hearts and minds as we begin this with one man. Grants and Fellowship Unit of CODESRIA. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Kadi Diop. Please put your hands together for her.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Otiv. Alors, c'est à mon tour de vous souhaiter la bienvenue à cette prestigieuse conférence. Avant de céder la parole à nos distingués invités, orateurs pour les allocutions d'ouverture, permettez-moi de rappeler que cet événement se veut participatif. Vos contributions, vos questions, vos perspectives sont essentielles pour enrichir nos débats. Alors, sans plus tarder, j'invite maintenant le professeur Fumni Olonishankin, I think I pronounce it well, à prendre la parole. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished participants, colleagues, and alumni of the African Leadership Center who are here also on the margins of this meeting celebrating their own reunion and 15 years of the African Leadership Center. Good morning. Excellent. I want to stand on the existing protocol. What an exceptional opportunity this experts conference, this gathering on ECOWAS at 50 is. to have this cross-generational, and I'm intentional in referring to it as cross-generational, this cross-generational gathering for the purpose of reimagining what a shared future might be for our region is nothing short of special, nothing short of exciting. Several decades ago, and I say several because I don't want to say quite how many decades ago, so as not to give away the ages of some of the people on the high table, ECOWAS stood out in Africa and in the world of regional entities. This pace-setting, path-breaking regional economic organization captured the imagination of the world when it pivoted into peacemaking, assembling peacekeeping troops to intervene in civil wars in its neighborhood, demonstrating agility, a commitment to shaping new norms, a commitment to innovation. The many innovations in this regard is what many scholars of my time, and that's why I talked about it earlier, devoted years of study to understanding ECOWAS, to understanding its contribution to community building in our region. But tides have turned, and I need not go through the details that will be part of our conversation today. The tides have turned because, as we know, change is one of the most stable currencies of life. Change is a consistent currency that we have to use and we have to engage, whichever way we do so. People and organizations unable to adapt to changing times might be swept away by it. I think we all know that. Now, talking about change, West Africa and the world at this moment are changing profoundly. For us in West Africa, the question of a growing population is one that I expect to embrace of the moment is that we have some 470 million West Africans on the continent of Africa. They represent about 5%, just over 5% of the world's population, with an average of about 8 years old. And no wonder we should be talking about that intergenerational or cross-generational conversation. Change again in West Africa is one that we ought to embrace because of new technologies, the dynamism of the next generation people we're talking about with an average age of 18. Change because they learn in new ways, they engage in new ways, they move about the region and the continent in new ways. So the promise of ECOWAS, to be an ECOWAS of peoples, is the promise of being an ECOWAS of peoples for this very next generation too, and especially them because of their sheer numbers and because of the scale of challenges that their generation will have to overcome. So an ECOWAS of peoples, which is the promise on which we all stood on as scholars, as eminent diplomats, as policy analysts, we stood on this promise and studied it passionately. That promise is under threat, but this period in the world, but this period for ECOWAS at the age of 50 means that we're reaching a milestone moment, and it offers us an opportunity to look back in order to look forward. That looking back in order to look forward means that we can reimagine collectively a shared future in West Africa, a shared future across generations, and that's why it gives me great pleasure to be working with our partners, Amandla, CODESRIA, WATHI, to be working together with ECOWAS to have a conversation, albeit sometimes a difficult one, about the future. And I look in this room today, I see an ECOWAS of peoples really being in conversation. And I want to warmly welcome you on behalf of my colleagues at the African Leadership Center. I want to welcome you to today's debate, today's discussion, and the conference that follows. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The promise of ECOWAS of peoples is under threat, which all of us have a collective responsibility to ensure that we weed away that threat. Please put your hands together again for Professor Olonishaki. Let me now invite Dr. Godwin Murunga, Executive Director, CODESRIA, to deliver his remarks. And after his remarks, he will invite Dr. Fayemi to give his remarks. Dr. Murunga.
Relevant to the work that ECOWAS does, and that makes us a very important partner in the work of regional cooperation integration in West Africa. And this therefore raises the important question to the extent to which we can talk about regional integration in 2025 as if it is something that we have set on our agenda as a permanent work in progress that will never really achieve notable gains. In 1969, a great son of Nigeria, the late Professor Jacob Ade Ajayi, wrote a very interesting essay. It was titled Colonialism, an Episode in African History. And in that essay, the late Professor Jacob Ade Ajayi simply argued that colonialism was, in fact, a very brief period in the history of Africa, one that had superficial consequences for the continent. Now, after publishing his essay, there was extended debate on this, and actually the debate was more intense here in Nigeria than many other places, with Peter Eke, for instance, arguing that that was a very wrong reading of the history of Africa. In his argument, he argued that there is a sense in which colonialism, even if over historic time was a very brief episode, it had a very deep impact on the continent. And I raise this question because Jacob Ade Ajayi's argument was simple, that in order to think about the consequences of colonialism, one has to think about the notions of continuity and change. Now, one area where this has been of serious consequence is in the area of the study of borders and borderlands. And this is particularly relevant, I believe, for ECOWAS and for all other regional economic communities across the continent. It's true of East Africa, for instance. It's true of SADC in South Africa. There's a deep colonial legacy around borders and borderlands. In fact, one would go on and say there are numerous sources of tension between states and people, resulting from the continuing impact of the establishment of boundaries across the continent. And this is seen mostly in West Africa, but in many other places across the continent, you see the absurdity of boundaries. There is a useful tension, however, to be thought about between the histories of people around regional integration and the histories of states around regional integration. And in my remarks, I just wanted to put on the table that this tension has persisted for so long, precisely because state-led initiatives of integration are lagging behind people-led initiatives of integration. And I think this is where Jacob Ade Ajayi's notion of continuity and change becomes a useful organizing framework for thinking about this. States are driven by a very Westphalian ethos, essentially aiming to control movements of people, goods, and services, imposing legalistic interpretations of what that should be. But at the end of the day, people's movements are beginning to exercise greater influence in this than any other that we know. Today, as we speak, technology is driving integration. Today, as we speak, there's greater demands for freedoms across the continent. Today, as we demand, there is a general tendency to disregard external dominance in influencing African politics. And the point I wanted to share as we open this conference is to make the point that state-led initiatives are going to have to cede ground, because at the end of the day, they are not going to win the movements that are driving integration on the continent. On behalf of CODESRIA and on behalf of the community of leadership that I work with, I want to leave the message to you that at the end of the day, what we see is that there is a youthful population on the continent that is in a rush for regional integration. And it's going to be very difficult to stop them from the rush to achieve that integration. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very good conference.
Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to invite the co-founder of Amandla Institute, Dr. Kaide Fayemi, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Program Director Dr. Igbuzo. Your Excellency, the President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Ali Omar Toure, ably represented by Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security. Our elders, the keynote speaker, Professor Abdullahi Bachili, former President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Mohamed Ibn Chambers, the co-founder of Amandla Institute, Erelu Bisi Adele FIME, and the Executive Secretary of CODESRIA, as well as Professor Fumi Olonishaki, the founding director of the African Leadership Center and my boss at King's College. It is, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there are so many of our distinguished leaders in ECOWAS here, and I'm really delighted on behalf of the Amandla Institute for Policy and Leadership Advancement to welcome you all to this African Political Square debate and the experts meeting on alternative futures for ECOWAS at 50, which has been jointly organized with the African Leadership Center in collaboration with CODESRIA and WATHI. For us at the Amandla Institute, this is a timely and critical conversation taking place on the shifting dynamics of change within ECOWAS, the deepening security and governance challenges in the sub-region, and the future of regional integration in West Africa, and indeed in Africa. It follows the meeting of ECOWAS founding fathers that we convened in June this year, chaired by the only living founding father of ECOWAS, General Yakubu Gowon, retired, and attended by the Commission's president, Dr. Ali Omar Toure, and most of his living predecessors in office, including Dr. Chambers. This important gathering presents us with another opportunity to reimagine the regional integration project in all of its dimensions: economic, security, political, and structural. In doing this, at a time that ECOWAS is celebrating its 50th anniversary, we must acknowledge the significant contributions of ECOWAS in shaping regional peace, security, and development. From inception, ECOWAS has been a pace-setter organization among the regional economic communities. ECOWAS pioneered norms and standards on peace and security, as well as on democracy and good governance. It also provided models of managing international peacekeeping operations with its laudable rescue missions in Liberia and Sierra Leone, and later in Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, and Guinea-Bissau. We're delighted we have distinguished leaders like General Martin Hagwai, who has been one of the major drivers of that exercise here in our midst. Under normal circumstances, even without its current challenges, a strong case could be made for a reinvention of the West Africa integration project. The grounds for such a reinvention are many, and they were already a source of discussions well before the 50th anniversary of ECOWAS. At one level, there are strong concerns that the promised transition from the ECOWAS of rulers, an elite club of political leaders, to a community of the people, centered on citizens, was not happening, or at least not happening as quickly and effectively as we all wished. At another level, concerns were accumulating that the much promised internal reforms designed to make the community more agile had stalled, with the consequence that the organization was becoming much more remote from the peoples of West Africa it was meant to serve, and in danger of being reduced to an inchoate bureaucratic juggernaut. Furthermore, for all the efforts that had been made in adopting various inter-West African trade promotion policies, progress was far from being optimal. And on such critical matters as the ECOWAS single currency, its promised launch had become an endless wait as the target date kept being shifted on account of various technicalities. Obstacles to intra-West Africa investment and the flow of services have persisted beyond what can be easily explained, suggesting a deficit of political will among our leaders. While steps were taken to improve the internal finances of the community, the problem of inadequate funding of many of its programs and agencies remains a challenge, a situation which has exposed the community to external influence by various donors who have not lost any opportunity to embed themselves in its structures and processes. the uncoordinated response of West Africa to the European Union's free trade proposals, packaged as the Economic Partnership Agreements, EPAs, is a case in point. Clearly, the current state of the regional body underscores the need for deep reflection on how ECOWAS can move beyond being an elite-driven institution to one that truly represents and serves its people, particularly its younger generation and its women. The challenges of poverty, inequality, governance deficits, and insecurity cannot be effectively addressed by ECOWAS in its current form. There is an urgent need for a new, citizen-centered approach that responds to the real concerns of ordinary West Africans rather than focusing solely on the priorities of political leaders. It is also my hope that a key part of our discussion will focus on security and the role of the military in addressing instability in the region. It is now evident that traditional military strategies alone are inadequate in tackling the complex threats posed by insurgent and terrorist groups. Many of these groups are deeply embedded within communities and even within our military. What is needed is a more sophisticated intelligence-based approach combined with efforts to address the underlying social and economic drivers of insecurity. We need a comprehensive human security strategy that deals with issues of poverty, inequality, and governance failures which extremist groups continue to exploit. While it is understandable that many citizens are frustrated with civilian governments that have failed to deliver on governance and security, we should also not mince words that military rule is not a viable alternative in tackling governance deficits. History has shown that military regimes do not provide sustainable solutions. In fact, in the 3 countries that have now exited ECOWAS, terrorism and insecurity have worsened since the military took over there. The challenge for ECOWAS is how to engage these regimes while also ensuring a pathway back to credible democratic governance. It is crucial that ECOWAS continues to leverage diplomatic efforts in finding pragmatic ways that do not alienate the breakaway states further, but instead bring them back into a cooperative regional framework. The current effort of the Commission in this regard is very well noted. ECOWAS has always been a flexible and adaptive regional body, accommodating different sub-regional groupings like UMOA, CENSAD, the Mano River Union, and many others. There is no reason why AES, the putative Sahelian bloc of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, cannot continue to be part of ECOWAS, even if they insist on maintaining a distinct identity. The goal should be to preserve regional cooperation, stability, and development, rather than encouraging further divisions. All of the issues confronting the region collectively reinforce the urgency of rethinking and reimagining ECOWAS's role in a changing West Africa and a changing global environment. The regional body cannot continue business as usual. It must evolve to reflect the realities on the ground and to rebuild trust with its citizens. 50 years is a significant milestone in which ECOWAS has accomplished a lot, but it must also serve as a moment of reckoning, a time for deep reflection, bold reforms, and a renewed commitment to the principles of regional integration, security, and inclusive governance. The future of West Africa depends on the choices we make today, and it is clear that ECOWAS must embrace change if it is to remain relevant in the years ahead. It is my hope that the experienced experts we have here and the putative academics who have joined us this morning will help us interrogate these issues comprehensively and provide salient directions for the next 50 years of ECOWAS. I wish us all a successful deliberation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kaede Fahimi. Please, can we give him another round of applause? So at this opening ceremony, the opening remarks are setting the tone for this conference. Professor Fumi Olonishaki, talked about the promise of ECOWAS of peoples being under threat. Dr. Godwin Morunga talked about the consequences of colonialism and the need for continuity and change, and the fact that the youth of West Africa are hungry for integration. Dr. Kayode Fayemi has talked about the need for reinvention of the West African project to a community of the people, and the need for political will and funding of ECOWAS. To round up this opening ceremony, the President of ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency Dr. Umar Aliyu Ture, will give the final opening remarks at this opening ceremony. And he's being represented here today by His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Abdel Fattah Musa, Commissioner for Public Affairs, Peace and Security, who always argue that ECOWAS is the best regional institution in the world. Can you give your hand of applause to Abdel Musa?
Thank you very much, my brother. My two key mentors and people that I learned a lot, worked under in the presence of His Excellency Mohammed Ibn Chambers, the former president of the ECOWAS Commission. And, today, I think he is actually holding about 4 or 5 different titles. That is the indispensability of his, of his services to West Africa and to the continent. So we greet you, His Excellency. The next, His Excellency, Professor Abdoulaye Bachili, I don't think he needs any introduction. It is a forum for his great intellectual work, his political leadership, worked across the field, the UN, regional organizations and others, and he is still leading us in our thought processes on the continent. We pay homage to you, Professor Bachili. And I would want to, also acknowledge, the presence here of His Excellency Kayode Fayemi, the former governor of Ekiti State and co-founder of Amandla, Institute, which incidentally is a core partner in the process of introspection that ECOWAS is carrying out currently as a facilitating body for the citizen consultations going on across the world. And of course, our sister and companion in the struggle is Her Excellency BC Fayemi, co-founder of Amandla Institute, and my brother, also that is the director of CODESRIA, who is here. We've had the occasion to work severally, and looking across the hall, you look at the intellectual firepower here assembled, whether in the economic, military, social, political, cultural fields. This promises to be a very important public square. And I would want to thank the Africa Leadership Center and King's College, London, and its the Vice President, Professor Funmi Olonishakin, who is here, who has worked for several years with ECOWAS and even in the establishment of the African Leadership Center, you know, and others. I think we've had a very fruitful partnership here, and we welcome you. There are a whole lot of other dignitaries here that time will not allow. We pay homage to you for making time to be present at this very important meeting. And on behalf of the President of the ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency Omar Aliu Toure, who is unavoidably absent, I just want to throw up a few, points to guide us in our deliberation today and then tomorrow. And I am very excited that we have got a cohort of the young generation of Africa here present. In fact, the leaders of today, you know, instead of how they are often described as the leaders of tomorrow. They are the drivers of change, you know, today in the world, and we are very happy that they are an integral part of this process. West Africa finds itself, as many have said, at a very critical juncture in its evolution. The ECOWAS evolution can be categorized into, you know, three, phases. The first phase, which was a very major challenge in West Africa, was the establishment of the organization itself in 1975. Why? Because if you look across Africa, West Africa is the region with most of the phones and the phones, Anglophone, Lusophone, Francophone. You go to the SADC region, the majority are Anglophone. You go to, I'm not talking about our own local languages, and you go to Central Africa, many Francophone, the North Francophone Arab. So ECOWAS had a very big challenge, bringing all, these different political experiences, colonial experiences together. And as Dr. Kayode, said earlier on, visionary military leaders like His Excellency Yakubu Gowon, General Yakubu Gowon of Nigeria, convincing His Excellency General Iyadema of Togo to be the two, linchpins for bringing, together all the African leaders to create this organization was itself a major success. And many have argued that ECOWAS was created as an economic integration body. So why is it delving into politics and others' internal affairs? That argument ignores history. In that at the height of the Cold War, with ideological differences and then proxy influences on the continent, it was practically impossible, to create an organization based on common political values, like this. So it was the epoch that determined the character of ECOWAS. That was the first period. The second period coincided with the, I will not, say the end of the Cold War, but the rise of the peoples of Africa, citizens of Africa, against military dictatorship, autocracy, and, all manner of, insidious government forms on the continent in general, and West Africa in particular, which led, in part, to the era of neoliberalism that we have known up until about, maybe 2020. And it also coincided with the threat of breakup of our entire region, being sparked by the civil wars in Liberia and Liberia, Sierra Leone. Later on, moving on to Cote d'Ivoire and others. That period was a period that ECOWAS also stood at the crossroads. ECOWAS could have folded its arms and allowed Liberia to degenerate into civil war, spread across West Africa, everybody for, themselves. But ECOWAS, stood up to the challenge and made sure we stabilized the region. And that experience actually led, and it was something that His Excellency Mohamed Ibn Chambers, in his role as the then Executive Secretary of ECOWAS and later President, championed all the normative frameworks in democracy, human rights, and others were crafted as a result of the experiences of the civil wars. Whether you are talking about the Declaration of Political Principles, the mechanism, protocol related to the mechanism for conflict prevention and others, and the supplementary protocol on democracy and good governance. These were all born out of cognitive experience that the region went through. And we've, ECOWAS has done a lot in the field of security, in economic integration, first and foremost, and in democratic consolidation since the end of those civil wars. Today, ECOWAS stands again at the crossroads. This is the third juncture, where events are being shaped by global shifts and also internal dynamics. It was a very famous liberation, fighter in West Africa, Amilcar Cabral, who just said a phrase made up of 4 words at Kwame Nkrumah's funeral in Ghana. Because when we know, that whatever the global environment, the spark to disintegration or progress very much depends upon the choices that nations make. So when people were talking about it was imperialism that killed Kwame Nkrumah, he said that might be true, but rice cooks in the pot. Rice cooks in the pot, meaning that without the traitors on the continent in Ghana, I don't think imperialism could have succeeded. This is where West Africa finds itself within the global, that we are now. I would dare to say that the world today is in a return to the Cold War, but it is between the Cold War and a hot war. We are actually in the warm war period. This is what is happening. All the characteristics of the Cold War are there, that you can identify globally. It is about bloc competition, whether you are talking about the NATO alliance plus G7, you are talking about the BRICS, and also their allies. Yeah, finish. What is different today, is that countries have choices. Countries have choices. It is just not a very clear-cut development in the world, and that there are countries that could be in the NATO, G7, or BRICS, or their allies, who cannot be seriously said they belong to this bloc or the other. And that countries choose what they want to do through their own values, their interests, and also the power that exists, whether what is a soft or hard power. This is where we are, today, the world is multivectoral, not just multipolar. Within the pools, there are also vectors that are there, and this is what the world is. But what is its impact on West Africa, and how do we get out of it, I think is the main purpose of this meeting today. I would argue, that we have a crisis of security, and then we have a crisis of democracy in West Africa today. And I think our discussion will have to, sort of navigate between, this. A lot has been said about terrorism, violent extremism, and others, and I'm not going to belabor it. Democracy is also, in crisis. It's in crisis today in West Africa, and it doesn't seem like leaders have learned their lesson. Today's, popular method of state capture is by member states eliminating dangerous opponents, whether political parties or candidates, from the electoral process. I mean, that is the latest fashion, on the, in West Africa and others, so that hollowing out the very essence of competitiveness when it comes to that. And that was one of the reasons the 3 member states in ECOWAS, decided to leave. It was one of the reasons. The other was insecurity. And as Dr. Fayode also said, insecurity has only worsened, since then. So where do we go, from here? And I think those are the critical questions. ECOWAS, therefore, decided to start a series of introspection, which are ongoing now. We've had a whole lot across the whole integration, framework of ECOWAS. It is citizens-led, and the outcome of all deliberations will end up in a pact, a draft pact, that will determine the path that ECOWAS will take in the next 50 years to come. Those discussions are ongoing now, and I think this public square is one, of them. I want, because of the the preponderance of citizens here, I would like to say that ECOWAS has always been a very good friend of citizens, of civil society. Beginning, with our facilitation of the creation of the West Africa Civil Society Forum, our partnership with WANEP, and a whole lot of other CDD, all across Africa. And today, citizens are being called upon again, to rise up to the challenge. I will say those who criticize ECOWAS, that ECOWAS is in crisis. It's not because ECOWAS is actually in crisis, but ECOWAS is the most talked about regional organization, not only in Africa, but globally, for better or for worse. And that is where we are. We need to continue with, that leadership. And for us gathered here, citizens will have to determine which path we go, whether we are going to go military dictatorship or a people-centered democratic, practice that will respond to the needs of our populations as, we are today. And Frantz Fanon's, famous, quote also comes to mind today. This is a generation, this is a new generation. We have to discover our mission. Discover our mission, either to fulfill it or to betray it. I hope for, for us to fulfill that mission. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Please put your hands together for Dr. Musa again. I was moving close to Musa, close to him, but he wasn't just looking at my side. Can you put your hands together for him again? Musa has given us the evolution of ECOWAS and the fact that there are global shifts and internal dynamics, and the context of crisis of democracy and insecurity. And our citizens have a lot of role to determine. That takes us to the end of the opening ceremony, but we'll request our guests to just come forward for the group photograph quickly. And after the group photograph, yes, you can move now, sir, Salmas. Just come to the front for group photograph. And we will be moving quickly to the African Public Square debate. As our guests are moving to the front for the group photograph quickly, we'll be moving to the African Public Square debate. And it's my pleasure to invite my co-director, Dr. Kadi Diop, to direct the next section. Please put your hands together for her.
Recording in progress.
M'écoutez, mais ça passe pas. C'est bon? C'est bon maintenant? OK. Alors, mesdames et messieurs, nous entrons maintenant dans le vif du sujet avec le débat African Public Square qui portera sur le thème central « Assurer l'avenir de l'intégration régionale en Afrique ». Ce thème est particulièrement d'actualité car la CEDEAO célèbre cette année 50 ans d'existence. C'est donc l'occasion de faire le point sur le chemin parcouru, mais aussi de regarder vers l'avenir. Comment faire en sorte que l'intégration régionale réponde vraiment aux besoins et aux aspirations des peuples africains? Et c'est justement autour de cette réflexion que se posent plusieurs questions fondamentales, à savoir, les organisations régionales sont-elles toujours indispensables à l'intégration africaine? Quels besoins réels devrait guider la construction d'une future CEDEAO des peuples? Et surtout, l'intégration régionale peut-elle vraiment réussir sans communauté politique ni base économique solide? Ces interrogations ne sont pas seulement théoriques. Elles nous invitent à réfléchir ensemble, à débattre et à proposer des pistes concrètes. Alors, pour nous présenter le concept d'African Public Square, je vais demander à Madame Chouvaï, directrice exécutive du Centre africain de leadership, de me rejoindre sur l'estrade. Madame Chouvaï, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Kadi. Thank you. And good morning to everyone. My name is Shuvai Busmanyoni, as Kadi has said, and I am the Executive Director of the African Leadership Center. My role here for just the next few minutes is to talk to you about the African Public Square and to introduce it to you. And to introduce to you the open debate that we are going to be having this morning. If I could ask, please, our debaters to join one of our fellow debaters who's already on the stage. If I could ask you to please come and join us on the stage, our debaters, all of you, yes, please. Yes, you will take your seats here on the stage. As they come to the stage, as I said, I'm here to introduce the African Public Square. The African Public Square was established by the African Leadership Center in 2023 as a platform to harness Africa's intellectual power and intergenerational agency. But before its launch and it's being established, the African Public Square, and I think the most important thing about it is that it is an idea. At the African Leadership Center, we are a center of ideas, and ideas expressed through people, many people who you will see in the room today in the person of our alumni community. And I think Professor Fumi has already spoken quite a bit about them. And we're very excited to be celebrating the 15th anniversary of the African Leadership Center and IDEA together with you here at the ECOWAS Commission and in Abuja in Nigeria. I will tell you, thank you, thank you. I just want to tell you what the APS, as we affectionately call it, aims to do. The APS aims to speak back to established agendas in the global landscape that place Africa at a disadvantage. It also offers new solutions and proposals for re-energizing Africa's normative and response framework with possibilities for Africa's renewal. It aims to also constituency of actors that speak for Africa when the spaces for engaging stakeholders, you've already heard that we have citizens with our regional organizations. The APS also offers a three-part intervention to raise Africa's position in the world. The first is a convening platform to convene new and established voices, constituting an intergenerational community of African public intellectuals, catalyzing the positioning of Africa in the global order. It is also an annual high-level continental forum, an African global public debate, bringing together prominent intellectuals along with a variety of interlocutors to frame and propose a framework of engagement on issues of shaping Africa's trajectory. It's an intergenerational community of African public intellectuals in co-leadership of special interventions that propose new ideas and forms of collaboration for responding to Africa's challenges and reshaping global engagement to raise Africa's position in the world. I will shortly invite Professor Fumi, I will shortly invite our moderator, who will be taking us through our debate today. But I just want to let you know that our debate is televised, it is live, and we will be beamed on channels, television, and other media outlets throughout the duration of the debate. As I said, our debate will be moderated by the esteemed Lara Owe-Wise, who is an award-winning journalist, a media practitioner, and public relations specialist. And she's also a commentator on contemporary affairs. So, Lara, I hand over to you. Welcome, please, to the stage to take us on with our debate. Thank you so much.
Good morning, great sons and daughters of Africa from every corner of our continent and everyone from the diaspora. Welcome to the African Public Square Open Debate, where bold voices meet big ideas and the future of our region takes the center stage. So let's open the floor and open our minds as we chart the path to a future-proof ECOWAS built by the people for the people. Yes, my name is Lara Oweyewise, and it's my honor and privilege to run the open debate in the next 2 hours. I want to let everybody know that we're live on TV, so smile for the camera. Right, I want to warmly invite Professor Fumi Oloni-Shaki to the podium. She was here earlier, but I wanted to come back and frame the debate and outline the ground rules for the APS open debate. Please put your hands together for her as she makes her way up here.
Thank you very, very much, Lara. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, I think we heard the beginning of the framing of this debate through the various opening statements this morning. Now, having heard what we heard earlier, let's be clear. The question before us is this: are regional organizations a necessity for regional integration? That is, do you need regional organizations in order to actually achieve regional integration? The fact that regional integration has become a story of two worlds, the world of peoples and the world of states, means that there's some justification for framing this question, because you could have heard what ECOWAS is about. You would also have heard what other regional organizations are about, the Continental organization as well, the African Union. If they're not about regional integration, what are they about? But here's the reason why we think this question is worth posing. It's not just a provocative question. It's worth posing because we see the tensions in the direction of travel of states and the direction of travel of peoples. Just a few examples. Porosity of borders is a necessity for African peoples. West African peoples are not an exception. If the border is porous, they move back and forth across the borders, but it always seems a threat to the state. The state desperately wants to control borders. But then we have freedom of movement of peoples and goods in West Africa, don't we? Does that actually mean that the states, when they're dealing with external partners, are not inclined to close those borders, control them, so that it works against the very logic of the ECOWAS of peoples? Let's consider that. Secondly, West Africa has this teeming, emerging youth leaders, teeming youth population. And the way they organize, their organizing logic, their interactions, you see an increasing prevalence of digital interaction. But yet, those of us who teach them, who operate the bureaucratic spaces, the governance spaces, are very analog in the way that we deal with them. That is an issue to think about. There's a tension there. Thirdly, again, in their organizing formula, peoples of West Africa, actually young people across the continent of Africa and in other regions of the world, but in West Africa, they veer towards building movements. They veer towards seamless organizing. and yet states remain in an extreme bureaucratic logic. So, point is, as African people continue to drive and pursue integration agenda, and we heard earlier that actually the state's integration agenda really is reinforced, it's the people's integration drive that really motivates the state to do that. Is that the case? Having given these examples, we're seeing a tension in everyday life, which causes us to frame the question we have framed. So here are the ground rules. Lara, you'll be pleased to know I'll do this in less than 2 minutes. Lead debaters, keynote debaters. We have two. The first is Professor Batili, who will be introduced. The second is Dr. Titilope Ajayi. They will speak for 6 minutes each, for and against the motion, if you like. They will speak in relation to this question, for regional organizations or for peoples, as it were. Each supporting debater, the other 4 debaters, will offer their responses, taking their stance for 3 minutes only. Thereafter, this debate will be open to contributors from the floor. Contributors from the floor will have their names on a speaker's list. Somebody will go around if you want to contribute. A speaker's list will be opened for a set period of time and then closed. You will see the person taking the list around the room. The fact that your name is on this list does not necessarily mean that you get to speak, but it will be orderly. You will speak according to where your name is on the list. Speakers from the floor will therefore speak for 1 minute only, and this will be strictly observed. When you speak for 1 minute only, you will not address questions to any of the speakers. This is not a question and answer session. What we ask of you is that you participate. Don't be a spectator. Don't be someone who's throwing questions at those people because you don't have a responsibility to offer a solution as well. So, speakers from the floor will contribute to the debate by offering a new fact. That's number one. Offer a new fact in your 1 minute. Or by supporting or opposing a position that has already been articulated by the speakers. If you're supporting it, say so and say why in your 1 minute, please. Or you could be offering a new perspective on the key issues raised in the debate so far. Please don't speak for long periods. State the fact, and you don't have to speak if you don't have anything to say. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lara.
Madam, your pen. Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. And thank you for sticking to time. One of the things I plan to do today is to stick to time. We have a limited number of hours to do the live broadcast we're doing, so we'll try as much as possible to maximize the time, and everybody will use the time allotted to them. Right, so we're going straight into the first segment of this debate, and the question is, are regional organizations a necessity for regional integration? We already have heard the ground rules, and I hope we'll stick by them. Let me invite His Excellency Professor Abdoulaye Bathily, the Special Envoy of the President of the Republic of Senegal for International Affairs and former member of ECOWAS Parliament, to come to the podium. He's arguing that regional organizations are necessary for regional integration. Please put your hands together for him as he makes his way here. Let me let His Excellency know that he has 6 minutes and your time starts now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's really a challenge for a professor to say for 6 minutes on this topic, and in addition to that, a former member of ECOWAS Parliament, I remember 25 years ago sitting in this row. Regional integrations are necessary and indispensable enablers for regional integration. Regional integration is rooted in the history of West Africa, in the history of Africa. Thousands of years of history. Professor Ajayi, who has been quoted earlier on, has demonstrated this. My good friend and colleague, Asiwaju, Professor Asiwaju, Professor Diko, the late Diko Onukua, Trade and Politics in Niger Delta, the history of ancient kingdoms and empire of Ghana and Mali, the Songhai, Kanem Bornu, shows that regional integration by empires and states has always been part of African history. Today, we are facing a number of challenges which make regional integration a must through regional organization. It is through regional organizations what we can organize infrastructures, roads, highways, air transport. This is through which the people can move across regions of a continent. Not one country can do it alone, and individuals cannot do this alone. Industry is today necessary for the transformation of raw materials, natural resources of Africa, to provide jobs for the 70 African population who need to be integrated in the process of modern economy. Agriculture for food production. Regional organization can, through cooperation, organize food production system better on our continent. The free movement of people and goods and services to give their plain capacity has to be organized by the states and sponsored by the state through mechanisms which are reliable. This is why regional organization through administrative, parliaments, legislative bodies can further regional integration. Security is today indispensable for regional integration to give its full capacity. We see today how, for the lack of insecurity, at sub-regional level, we are faced with the disruptions of the ECOWAS of the people. Regional organizations are necessary to be a vehicle for the voice of Africa in the world as it is today. Africa's voice needed to be heard for the economy, for politics, for culture. Our people have been trampled upon down for centuries. Slavery, colonialism. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, I think as enablers of regional integrations, regional organizations are necessary and indispensable. This is my position. Thank you very much indeed.
That was brilliant, Prof, and thank you very much for sticking to time. You gave me 45 seconds extra. Thank you very much indeed. So basically, Prof has made us understand that regional integration has always been an African thing and has been part of our history. But Dr. Titilope Ajayi does not think so. I'm going to bring him up here. And his position is very simple. He argues that regional organizations are not a necessity for regional integration. After all, West African peoples have driven regional integration where ECOWAS has stalled integration efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together as I bring to the podium Dr. Titilope Ajayi from the Institute for Security Studies Africa, ISS Africa. She also has 6 minutes. Thank you. Your time starts now.
Thank you. I have titled my intervention, When the Roof Outgrows the House, Rethinking the Need for Regional Organizations in African Integration. Are regional organizations necessary for regional integration in Africa? My argument is simple. They are not. Regional organizations once symbolized collective aspirations, but over time, the roof has outgrown the house. The institutions have expanded while the foundations of trust, mobility, and cooperation among citizens have been neglected. Integration did not begin with bureaucracies, and it will not end without them. In fact, the continent's most enduring connections have rarely been contingent upon the Secretariat's sanction. 3 snapshots of lived experience will show what happens when institutional regionalism drifts too far from the realities it claims to represent. Story 1. Just last month, an ECOWAS member landing in Praia, Cabo Verde, spent 2 hours at immigration. Responding to her question about why Caucasian travelers were being fast-tracked through an empty line, officers said, "Your passport does not pass here." What failed here was not the idea of regional belonging. It was the institution's ability to recognize it. Story 2, July, also this year. Protesters in Accra, Ghana carried signs reading, "Nigerians must go." Their anger was not aimed at neighbors alone, but at a regional system that speaks of free movement while ignoring how unevenly it plays out on the ground. Institutions may have claimed the language of integration, but not its social foundations. Story 3, years ago, a delegation traveling between ECOWAS countries was stopped at a border post. Their passports and clearances were in order, yet they were told to pay a fixed amount per person to proceed. One delegate protested, asking about ECOWAS free movement protocol. The officer said, and I quote, "La CEDEAO c'est là-bas. Ici c'est la frontière." In other words, keep your ECOWAS. At this border, you will do as we say. These stories reveal a deeper truth. Integration exists, but institutions are struggling to keep pace. Long before ECOWAS or SADC or any of the other acronyms that we like to bandy about, Africans have traded, as the previous speaker said, migrated, and built networks that ignored colonial borders. We have been integrating long before politicians began creating infrastructures around this. Our modern organizations were meant to formalize this reality, but instead they have often frozen it. We have built bureaucracies that manage the idea of integration more than they enable its practice. Africa now boasts 8 recognized regional communities, dozens of frameworks, multiple overlaps in membership and mandates. But these structures have produced coordination fatigue and chaos, not cohesion. Integration has become a paper exercise, producing thick reports, hundreds of meetings, and thin results. Afrobarometer data shows that half of Africans trust regional organizations, and only 1 in 4 finds it easy to cross a border. This is not rejection, it is irrelevance. Our regional bodies remain hostages to the states that create them. They cannot transcend politics when their funding and legitimacy depend on the goodwill of heads of state and government, and to a large extent, funders. The same organizations that sign free movement protocols close borders overnight when it suits them. No names mentioned. Worse, this selective obedience extends to policy frameworks on governance and democracy. Leaders ratify charters against corruption and unconstitutional changes of government and then violate them with impunity. When this happens, responses are inconsistent. Condemnation in one country against quiet accommodation in another. We have seen this play out time and again, and we are seeing it play out now in Cameroon and in Tanzania, and we have one eye on Côte d'Ivoire. This chronic non-compliance hollows out credibility and turns regionalism into a stage for power and not principle. Every crisis exposes the same pattern. Institutions act only when it is politically conducive, not when it is regionally necessary. Yet integration continues, quietly, creatively, and without permission. Traders, migrants, and entrepreneurs link cities faster than ministries. Pastoralists and digital startups connect economies beyond formal regulation. Women's groups have historically brokered peace across the continent. They continue to do so where diplomacy has faltered. This is integration from below. It is organic, informal, and self-organizing, messy but real. Africa's capacity for connection lies not in its institutions, but in the interaction of its diverse peoples. We often hear that security is the one area where regional organizations are indispensable. But even here, the evidence falters. ECOWAS once symbolized regional defense. Today, that center no longer holds as firm. So if regionalism fails, what is the future? The answer is already unfolding in the networks of people and places who already do across borders what our regional institutions only debate on paper. The late Ama Ata Edu once said, "We keep trying to build houses from the roof down." This is what we have done with African regionalism. We built the roof first, mistaking institutions for the house itself. But the house, which is the real work of integration, never stopped being built. It has found foundations in the movements, exchanges, and solidarities of ordinary Africans. Regional organizations were never the house, they were the roof that was meant to protect it. Once useful, but now ill-fitting and partly detached. Our integration survives because the foundations are alive in people and not protocols. And whether that roof ever fits again or not, the house stands, especially in the evolving regional and global order. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Ajayi, for your contribution. And basically, regional organizations are not a necessity for regional integration. All right, so let me quickly run through the ground rules again as we progress to move to the supporting arguments. So basically, the lead debaters are done. They've taken their 6 minutes. Each supporting debater or respondent will offer their responses for just 3 minutes only. Thereafter, the debate will be open to contributors from the floor. A special list will be open for a set period and then closed. So if you have been asked to join the debate, your name will be on the speaker's list. I have the list already, but subsequently the microphone will be passed around. And if you want to make your contribution, then you signify with the raise of a hand. Speakers from the floor will not address questions to any of the prior speakers. Rather, they will contribute to the debate by offering a new fact, supporting or opposing a position that has been articulated with clear reasons for doing so, or offering a new perspective on the key issues raised in the debate so far. So let's be clear about that as we move to our supporting debaters. Dr. Babatunde Afolabi and Dr. Faisal Garba Mohammed are going to present supporting cases for the position taken by His Excellency Professor Bathili and Dr. Titilope Ajayi by responding to the question, can you have regional integration without political community? Let me warmly, he's here already, Dr. Afolabi to the podium. He has 3 minutes. Thank you. Please put your hands together for him.
It's good to be here, Excellencies, mentors, and friends. I wish I could take the 45 seconds that the professor had left. I hope that will be the case. Okay, yeah, very quickly. I wanted to establish a few truths or posit a few points, and then go quickly to examples of the utility of ECOWAS or regional institutions. First, to stress that the primacy and centrality of the Westphalian state as the building block of international systems is sacrosanct. States are the building blocks in the international system. States are the building blocks for regional organizations, and states cannot function without rules, without institutions, without norms. I wanted to, highlight that very quickly. And I also wanted to, with time permitting, share a few examples, concrete examples of ECOWAS's utility over the past 5 decades, and for you, the audience, to reflect on whether this achievement would have been possible outside of the framework of a formal regional institution. Firstly, the ECOWAS free movement of goods and persons, the protocol, which establishes that, and which of course means that every ECOWAS member state citizen can work and undertake trading activities and also undertake visa-free travels across the sub-region. I think it is clear, obvious, that this would be impossible without, the framework of a formal institution. Let's also go back, of course, as had been alluded earlier, to the several peacemaking and peacekeeping interventions that have been undertaken since 1990, when that unfortunate civil war broke out in Liberia, and which, of course, led to our heads of states coming together under the auspices of ECOWAS to stem the tide of that violent conflict. And of course, beyond Liberia, I don't need to go into all the details, but where history is replete with, the various interventions in Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, Cote d'Ivoire, when it comes to core peacekeeping. And then, of course, several high-level political interventions in places like Togo, Guinea, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and Cote d'Ivoire in recent history when it comes to peacemaking interventions. If time permits, the huge infrastructural projects across the sub-region on transport, energy, water, telecommunications, and very concretely to highlight the Abuja-Lagos Corridor Highway. These are living examples of why you need an institutionalized, regional arrangements. Time will not permit me to talk about the institutions such as the ECOWAS Court of Justice, the Parliament, and specialized agencies. Let me conclude. I like Dr. Ajayi's stories about the, non-utility or non-importance of regional arrangements. But I'm reminded that Dr. Ajayi actually lives in Ghana, is Nigerian, studied in Ghana, and actually arrived here yesterday, visa-free. So I wonder whether that would... thank you very much.
Dr. Ajayi, I'm sure you want to respond to that, but there's no time. We'll probably do that off camera, maybe after the show. Thank you very much. Right, so we want to thank you, Dr. Afolabi, for your invaluable contribution, and thank you for sticking to time. You actually used up the extra 45 minutes that, so it's okay. Dr. Faisal Garba Mohammed will come here to argue that, on the contrary, West African people have been key facilitators of political community in West Africa, while regional organizations have hindered the progress toward a political community. Dr. Faisal Garba Mohammed, let's put our hands together for him as he makes his way here and uses up his 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought I would begin by contrasting us with a very popular staple in this part of the world, just to illustrate the point. That you see, human beings, we are not exactly like yam, you see. We do not grow out of any soil. Wherever you find people, they are there because they moved there. Now, this in a sense captures the making and the production of the political community in West Africa, which is largely captured as a migration and mobility confluence. You see, that history has produced a far-flung political community, but also a livelihood structure and a cosmopolitan outlook that pushes back and challenges the colonial statecraft, which fuses identity to place and therefore reifies tribalism. And to illustrate this again, I thought I should go back to history to a very famous saying among the Dogons of present-day Mali in the 1930s. And this saying might be useful to those of us who will go to check.
You, Dr. Faisal Garba Mohammed, you actually had 2 finalists. You had one finally, and then you had another one. And I'm happy that finally your 3 minutes, you used them very well. Thank you very much indeed. We're going further to invite more supporting debaters. Ambassador El Kazim Wane, right, and Dr. Penda Diallo to address the question that can there be regional integration without an institutional base and without a core economic base? Let me invite Ambassador Wane to the podium. He's looking at the experience
recording in
of the
progress.
African Union. Ambassador El Kazim Wane would take a view that you require an institutional-based regional integration, which invariably serves as a driver for maintaining an economic base. Thank you very much, Prof. And like we said earlier, we have 3 minutes. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. I just start by making a precision and take it out of my 3 minutes. I'm not an ambassador, but I was appointed by FUNMI. But anyway, I accept it. Now, I would like really to bring a short historical perspective to our debate on institutional base and economic integration. And this will make it possible to anchor our debate in the overall trajectory of the OEU-AU. When you go back to the founding of the OEU in May 1963 in Addis Ababa, the central debate was between those who advocated for immediate continental unity, Nkrumah, and few other leaders, and those who felt that we needed to be more realistic and proceed through, in a gradual fashion, building on sub-regional and regional groupings. And the background, of course, were the divisions that pre-existed to the establishment of the OAU, with the existence of groupings based on linguistic and ideological considerations, which were seen as being an impediment to African unity. The issue was resolved in Dakar in August 1963. It was the first ordinary OAU Council of Ministers, and a resolution was adopted that recommended that for regional groupings to be compatible with the OAU, they have to focus on economic, social, technical, and scientific issues, and leave political matters to the OAU. Now, what happened thereafter, and this is my key point, is that from the outset, the OAU chose to foster economic integration through regional and sub-regional groupings. The only issue that was controversial was the political role of those regional and sub-regional groupings, which, as I said earlier, was resolved in Dakar, even though the reality was a bit messier. Now, bringing this to our thematic question, in my view, an institutional base matters. You can't just rely on market forces or popular drives to foster economic integration. You need the institutional machinery to provide rules, to provide
the capacity to mobilize resources and sustain coherence, and also you need just basic rules for things to work. And when you look at the continental architecture, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the Abuja Treaty, they are all based on this gradual process based on regional groupings. Now, and this is critical, we should recognize that if and when African integration is fully achieved, regional groupings may become redundant. In fact, even our states may become, less salient. That's the point. Now, in that sense, the institutional base is transitional. It underpins integration, but as we move forward in integration, it becomes less important. In short, building a strong regional economic integration requires a strong institutional base. But the ultimate goal is economic prosperity. It's not creating just one more bureaucracy. The question before us, therefore, is whether our institutions allow us to build that economic base. And for the AU, economic base and economic integration and institutional base go hand in hand. Thank you. I have rested my case.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'll still call you Prof, because that's what I have here, and you do look like one. Thank you, Prof, for your contribution. So basically, Prof said that we require an institutional-based regional integration, which invariably serves as a driver for maintaining an economic base. Thank you once again, Prof. Right, so I'll bring up now Dr. Penda Diallo, Associate African Leadership Center. You're ready, don't worry. Your time will start counting when I leave. All right. And her argument basically will be that the perspective of West African people in rural communities, particularly in mining communities, who provide the basis for facilitating and accumulating the economic base for regional integration. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together as I welcome to the podium Dr. Penda Diallo, Associate African Leadership Center. Now your time starts.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I want to thank the ALC, ECOWAS, and all the institutions that have hosted us here today. So my question, my response will be framed around three questions, which for me are questions that are uncomfortable, but we need to think about if we want to create an ECOWAS of the people. So the first question is that, how do we speak of integration when the majority of our people live in rural areas? This is over 220 million who are excluded from the debates we are having, because these debates, policies, and frameworks happen in languages that most of them don't speak. They are in French, in English, in Portuguese. And these people are excluded from this. The second is why does it take me about 10 hours to fly from Conakry to Abuja, which is 2,329 kilometers. Yet it takes me about 6 hours, a direct flight, to fly from Conakry to Paris, which is 4,613 kilometers. What does this tell us? How can we integrate if we cannot have direct connections between ourselves, between our key capital cities? Another question I have is that we all know that uranium, gold, tin, and many other minerals, all of these which are important for what the world is calling the transition to the green energy. Without this transition cannot happen. Yet our rural communities where these are extracted have no clean water, no infrastructures, no schools. And this is not just a problem of one country. I think it's an ECOWAS problem we need to think about. And second, the majority of our youth are unemployed. We see high unemployment across the ECOWAS region. We are educating young people, telling them that they will have jobs in the mining sector, but the majority of the mining sector will be moving towards automation, the use of AI, and artificial intelligence. In places like Chile, you have driverless trucks going around in mine sites. Yet our universities are not teaching students these type of technologies that will equip them for the future. So which means that the unemployment will increase. So I see three paradoxes. The first is the connection paradox. So if we are not connected to each other, we cannot talk about integration. If it's easier to travel to our colonial powers than amongst each other. The second is the resource paradox that we have. And another, yes, so for the next 50 years of ECOWAS, what I see is that there is an African proverb that says it is not wrong to go back for what you forgot. So we've forgotten over 220 million people. And these are the people who are really showing us through integration, like my colleague said earlier. They are the women, the young people who are traveling behind trucks, who are doing business between Accra, Abuja, Lagos, Mali, and all of that. So what I want to say is that these local communities who don't sit in ECOWAS meetings, who are excluded from the formal systems, are the ones who are showing us what true integration looks like. And we need to include them for a future, for an ECOWAS of the people. Thank you. So, yes.
Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Penda Diallo, for that, your contribution. So I picked a few nuggets. She said, how do we talk about integration where majority of our people live in rural areas? Why we must also look at having direct connections between our major cities. So basically, in summary, Dr. Penda Diallo argued that, excuse me, please. Sorry for that break in transmission. She argued that from the perspective of West African people in rural communities, particularly in mining communities, who provide the basis for facilitating and accumulating the economic base for regional integration. I want to thank all our debaters, our lead debaters, our supporting debaters for their deep contribution. May I ask us all to put our hands together for them one more time? Now the debate is open. The floor is open. We have a list. Earlier we announced that anybody who wanted to speak should put down their names, so I have a list already. But if after I call the names here, there are about 11 of them, you want to say something, please raise your hand and names will be taken, right? Okay, right away. If you want to say something, please indicate with the raise of your hand so they get down your name so I can call you and then you have your 1 minute to make your contribution. All interviewers would need to go to closet's mic set at the back, right? There is one on each side. This includes the one on your initial list. So if you want to speak, there are mics there. If you, can we signify where the mics are? Right. Great. So the debate is open now, and our contributors have just a minute. May I quickly remind us that if you're coming for this 1 minute contribution, you will not address questions to any of the prior speakers. Rather, you contribute to the debate by offering a new fact in 1 minute, by supporting or opposing a position that has been articulated with clear reasons for doing so in 1 minute, or you offer a new perspective on the key issues raised in the debate so far. Please do not forget that you have just 1 minute to articulate your thought. Right, so let's dive right into it as I invite General Martin Aguayi respectfully for his 1 minute contribution. He's there already. Put your hands together for General Martin Aguai.
Thank you very much. I just want to, having heard all this, I remember my few months or years in Sierra Leone and Liberia. And how would we have had what I had in Sierra Leone, war done done? The war is over. Who brought it to that level? The Economic Community of West Africa. We brought soldiers, officers from Nigeria, Ghana, across the whole of West Africa, and we got support from other parts of the world. And without an organized body, I do not know how we have sleeve or long sleeve. Those who understand what I'm saying, cutting people with arms, short sleeve or long sleeve. How could it have been solved? So I think, yes, there are challenges. Yes, there are issues of economy, and illiteracy, and ignorance. But we need an organization that will pull us together, use all our resources together to stand, and it can only be done by a state that forms itself together from a regional body that can help the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. General Martin Aguai, you used your 1 minute very well, and your point is well taken. Let me also invite Fatou Bintou Salah, who will give his or her contribution in 1 minute. After that, Wakeje Hamawo, please stand by for your contribution. Put your hands together for Fatou Bintou Salah. Can Wakeje Hamawo and Ibrahima Kane just stand by so they can take the mic after her? Right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Fatou Bintou Salah. As you've rightly said, I'm from the Gambia. The question before us, which is our regional organizations, a necessity for regional integration in Africa, is not abstract. For me, coming from the Gambia, it's very personal. For a lack of time, I'll give a very practical example. When our constitutional order was threatened in 2016, after former President Jammeh rejected the election results, it was ECOWAS, under its protocol on democracy and good governance, that intervened. ECOWAS deployed economic peace forces, led mediation, and ensured a peaceful transfer of power to an elected government, which we still have. That decisive regional action prevented bloodshed and safeguarded our democracy. And that same solidarity continues. In 2024, ECOWAS approved a hybrid tribunal with the Gambia to prosecute Jammeh-era atrocities, a landmark for regional justice. For small states like ours, the Gambia, regional organizations aren't just abstract institutions. They are lifelines. They give us solidarity, legal recourse, and collective strength. Regionalism for Africa isn't just diplomacy. It's really survival. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatou. Wakeje Hamawo, thank you. You have the floor now.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Wakeje Hamawo from Togo. I'm a former ALC fellow. I'm of the opinion that regional organizations are not necessary for regional integration. As Dr. Titi Lope articulated so eloquently earlier, they stifle progress, and this integration has always historically existed naturally, led by the people. My reflection is more about the fact that in 2025, it feels like what is needed is a greater integration at a continental level. As a young African woman, what motivates me are mechanisms like the African Continental Free Trade Agreement area, or the promises of the AU's Agenda 2063. Quite frankly, I'm unsure of how ECOWAS influences my daily life personally, because at this stage, when I travel from Togo to Ghana, I'm still asked way too many questions at the border, and it feels like it's at the discretion of the officer in front of me rather than the law. In 2025, we are seeing a greater cultural integration of the continent as a whole. African pop music and creativity are taking up so much space on the global stage. And guess what the kids are listening to? We're listening to Afropiano, which is the love child of Afrobeats from West Africa and Amapiano from Southern Africa. And so I question the relevancy in this increasingly global world of these regional institutions. And for the past few years, during WATHI December, we see that Ghana waives visas for anyone of African descent. This has greatly stimulated their tourism industry, and it's shows that it is possible if we want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Wokeji. Hamao. Ibrahim Kane. Is he here? All right, so let's go to Ruth Ogbewekon. So I asked that you move here, so that's why I'm calling you well ahead of time.
Can I?
So, yeah, excellent, thank you.
I will be speaking in French because I'm not an anglophone.
Oui, monsieur, oui, oui.
Ouais. Alors, une des questions que je voudrais aborder ici, parce que la CEDEAO ce matin, on a dit, a été très innovative, c'est le concept de citoyen régional. On l'a inventé en 1982, mais c'est les régionales qui lui ont donné un contenu effectif.
Are you done? The mic, right? I wish you had made it to this point, because that mic is spotless. Let's make it very quickly, sir, monsieur. Ruth Egbewe Kon Eka Ipe, Dr. Carlos Cardoso. Please stand by at this aisle so we don't waste a lot of time trying to get you to your microphones. Oui, monsieur.
Merci, madame. Donc, je disais que une des inventions de la CEDEAO depuis sa création, c'est le concept de citoyen régional qui permet de gérer dans tous les pays la diversité que cette région a. Mais ce concept, depuis 1982, n'a pas connu d'évolution, alors que sous d'autres cieux, ils ont adopté le concept de citoyenneté et lui ont donné un contenu effectif. Ce serait bon, dans le contexte de ces célébrations, d'envisager de renforcer cette idée de citoyenneté et de permettre aux citoyens de la CEDEAO de pouvoir interagir plus fréquemment, plus effectivement avec les institutions de la région. Ce n'est pas seulement la Cour de justice de la CEDEAO qui va permettre aux gens, quand ils ne sont pas contents du fonctionnement de la CEDEAO, d'exprimer leur vue. Ils doivent avoir d'autres mécanismes moins compliqués pour agir, vraiment se faire entendre par les institutions de la région. Voilà ce que je voulais ajouter. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. That's how far I can go. Right, Ruth Egbewekon, is she there? Right, and then after her, Eka Ikpe, and then Dr. Carlos Cardoso. You have the floor now, ma'am.
Thank you. Ruth Ogwewekon, representing the Pan-African Lawyers Union, PALU. I would like to thank all the debaters and just a blanket statement that I agree that regional institutions are essential for regional integration. Very quickly citing African philosophy, Ubuntu, I am because we are. And this is not, regional communities and regional institutions is not a foreign construct to the continent. In fact, it is a characteristic of African political organization and African political behavior. And with all due respect to the debaters, I think that diminishing the importance of this institution is an antithesis to Pan-Africanism. I would also, at the same time, like to validate some of the arguments that were raised against regional institutions. And just to say that what I am hearing is a critical analysis of the institution that we have and an identification of ways to strengthen the gaps and challenges that we have. And just to conclude by saying that there's a Swahili saying, Sisi ndio tuko, that means we are the ones who are here, and so ECOWAS is the institution that we have at the moment, and there is a ripe opportunity to strengthen these gaps and to work towards regional integration with the institutions that we have and in a way that works perfectly for West Africa's people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Eka Ipe.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to all the contributors. Some very powerful points were made. I'm going to agree that regional institutions or frameworks are essential for regional integration, and even beyond that, regional integration is essential for Africa's liberation. This is the reason why the Organization for African Unity, the African Union, ECOWAS, were actually established. And I think more than ever, in the moment in which we're existing today, with the travails of, multipolarity, just thinking of 2025 this year, what we're hearing from the global north economies, how they are contending with more nationalist approaches, it's going to be very difficult for any country in the African continent to negotiate with that system on an individual basis. This has to be done collectively. I think what we've heard, though, today is agreement on all fronts, that there is utility of these regional frameworks and institutions in some form, that there has been historically, there could be going forward. And I think that is the purpose of this moment. What is demanded of ECOWAS today, in this moment? We heard about those who have been left out of this regional agenda so far.
Thank you.
So what can be done to address that right now? Thanks.
Thank you so very much. Agreement, she said there's been agreement on all fronts, and I do agree with her. Dr. Carlos Cardoso, please, you have the mic. After him, Haja Saramba Kande, and Antonia, is that what I have here? Mbro. Say that? Antoinette. Mbro. Yeah? All right. Cardoso.
Eu acho que as instituições, as organizações regionais são absolutamente indispensáveis para que se chegue à integração regional. O que eu acho que tem faltado muito a nível dos nossos Estados é um mecanismo para seguir, para monitorar as decisões que são tomadas e que são absolutamente indispensáveis e fundamentais para garantir a integração regional. Se nós olharmos para a fronteira entre a Guiné-Bissau e o Senegal, nós vemos muitas irregularidades que são cometidas pelas próprias autoridades oficiais que não facilitam essa integração. Quando eu tenho um passaporte diplomático e não tenho que pagar um tostão para atravessar a fronteira, mas quando a minha tia, que não tem um rendimento, tem que pagar 1.000 francos ou 2.000 francos para atravessar a fronteira entre Bissau e Senegal ou vice-versa, eu acho que aí há qualquer coisa que nos falta e é esse mecanismo de controlo e de seguimento das decisões absolutamente indispensáveis que não é posto em circulação. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carlos Cardoso, for your contribution. Let's invite Haja Sarambe Kande to take the mic. After her, then Antoinette Mbro, then Dr. Akibode Fashaki, and then Dr. Fatima Akilu, in that order.
Thank you to all the contributors. I am from Sierra Leone.
and I lived through the civil war in Sierra Leone. When the international community and the world turned its backs against us, it was ECOWAS that stepped up. So yes, I believe ECOWAS, regional organizations like ECOWAS are not only a necessity, they're indispensable. Because how else, which other mechanism could ensure our shared security? I mean, we're talking of integration, but there is no integration without peace. And I believe ECOWAS has demonstrated that you need a mechanism in place to intervene. Let's admit it has faltered. I know now I think the interest of leaders has taken over the people's interest. We see that in ECOWAS court judgments. We see that in the positions that they've been giving to leaders who flaunt our constitutions. So yes, I think the question really shouldn't be whether ECOWAS is a necessity, but how do we strengthen institutions like ECOWAS to deliver for the people, rather than doing away with them.
Haja Sarambe Kandida from Sierra Leone. Antoine Mbro.
Merci, madame.
Dorian.
Je suis Antoinette Mbro, je viens du Togo. Je représente le WILDAF Afrique de l'Ouest. Merci pour les contributions. J'irai également dans le sens de la position qui défend le fait que les organisations régionales sont une nécessité pour l'intégration régionale en Afrique. Je vous dirai que l'intégration régionale en Afrique ne peut véritablement et réellement se réaliser sans des organisations fortes comme la CEDEAO. Vous conviendrez également avec moi que ces organisations ont plusieurs rôles à jouer, notamment le rôle économique, le rôle politique, le rôle sécuritaire. Des exemples ont été donnés ici. Et quand je prends le rôle sécuritaire que la CEDEAO joue, je vous rappellerai le travail qui a été fait au Libéria, le travail qui a été fait en Sierra Leone, par exemple. Bien sûr, je suis d'accord avec vous que les défis subsistent, beaucoup de défis subsistent. L'un des défis, c'est le manque de cohésion, par exemple. Il y a également la lenteur de mise en œuvre des décisions. Il y a aussi la méfiance de certains peuples. Mais malgré ces défis, je peux vous assurer que la CEDEAO reste indispensable. Et je dirais pour terminer que sans une organisation régionale forte et solidaire, l'intégration africaine ne serait qu'un idéal, alors qu'elle devrait être une réalité qui sera vécue par les peuples d'Afrique de l'Ouest. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much indeed. All right, Dr. Akimbadi Fashaki and then Dr. Fatima Akilu. Yeah. Your mic is not on. 1 minute, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Very nice to listen to all the interesting conversations and debates. I'll begin with a small story. 3 generations of mothers, every time they cut the head of their fish to fry their fish, and the 3rd generation, the child of the 3rd mother, asked the mother, why do you always cut the head of the fish? She says, well, my mom used to do it like that. It takes back to the 1st generation, and the mother said, I used to cut the head of my fish because the one I have is so small. What am I trying to say? Institutions are made by man, by humans. Humans make institutions. Institutions don't make human beings. I'm taking a central position. I'm not saying for or against. We need institutions, but they must serve us. We see that existing institutions, state, regional organizations, they have been instruments in the hands of a few, and this is quite problematic. People will always find outlets to speak, to engage, to interact, to express themselves, and they have done so. We know about the informal economy. It controls more than 70% of the economy in West Africa. It employs more than 70% of the working class in West Africa. How can we make regional organizations more effective is what we should think about. Cut off all the bureaucracy, reduce the corruption, and ensure that it works in the interest of people. As I started, Institutions don't make humans, humans make institutions. We must think about how to make them more effective. Thank you.
Thank you. That was spot on. Dr. Akimbode Fashaki, institutions don't make people. Yeah, brilliant. Dr. Fatima Akilu. Dr. Fatima Akilu.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I see it as really two ends of a bridge, a hard end and a soft end, a top-down and a bottom-up approach, history on one side and modernity. But perhaps we should be looking at that liminal space in between the bridge. That can actually represent a vulnerability or a strength. We've heard from both sides and what each side can do better. It's true, regional bodies can do large infrastructure projects, they can do economic, social, security integration, and that is their job. On the other hand, we see people, communities that are so much better at balancing their diversity, they're so much better in terms of integration of values and really meeting. So I think that from what I've heard, we must, to meet the moment, we must actually bring these two sides together because no one side can do it by itself.
Thank you very much. Dr. Fatima Akilu, we must bring the two sides together. Brilliant submission there. So I have a list here of people who raised their hands, and we already have a list, and unfortunately it's closed. The first person I'd like to invite is Dr. Atahiru Jega, Nigeria's no-nonsense professor turned democracy referee, the man who brought chalkboard discipline to ballot boxes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Atahiru Jega to the microphone.
Thank you so very much for this opportunity. I would like to say that to answer this question, it's important that we understand our lived reality, which is that we live in modern nation states. And modern nation states have certain defined characteristics. The first one is that they are territorially defined, and that's why they have borders, and these borders are regulated. The second is that they have citizenships. We all belong in one or the other of these territorially defined countries. And of course, the third issue is that these territorially defined countries have what they call sovereignty. So when you look at this, it is very, very clear that if you want some form of integration across these countries, you need a regional organization to help facilitate and catalyze and coordinate the attainment of the objectives of integration. So the question really is not whether regional organizations are important or necessary for integration. I think what we need to say is that they are necessary, but they are not sufficient for integration in our sub-region or continentally. So what we need to do is how to strengthen the regional organizations and also how to explore the other things that we may also need to do in order to complement the work of regional organizations for desirable regional integration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Atahiru Jega. for your contribution. We must understand our lived reality. We all belong to territories defined by countries, and each country has its own sovereignty. So regional organization is needed for the purpose of integration. Thank you. Brilliant as always. Let me invite General Faye to the microphone, and Aleida Borges, right? So you take the microphone after General Faye. Thank you. Yeah, you can use that if it works. But yeah, merci beaucoup. No, it's not working, sir. General Faye on his way to the microphone. After that, we take Aleida Borges, then Ambassador Shehu Abdullahi and Professor Chris Isike in that particular order. Please make your way to the microphone so we save time.
Permettez-moi de reformuler la question qui nous interpelle. En fait, c'est quel type d'organisation régionale, avec quel mandat et quelle gouvernance? Peut-être le professeur en a touché un mot tout à l'heure. Et comme il est interdit de poser des questions, je vais aller avec la réponse. En fait, l'intégration par le bas existe déjà. Regardez un peu le commerce transfrontalier, regardez un peu les migrations intra-africaines sans cadre formel. C'est déjà une forme d'intégration qui est déjà là. Donc, ce qu'il nous faut, c'est développer les routes de l'intégration qui ont été définies déjà par la CEDEAO et par l'Union africaine. En mettant l'accent sur les infrastructures. Par exemple, à l'indépendance, nous avions le train Dakar-Niger. Et on peut avoir, si aujourd'hui, 60 ans après, on avait une autoroute Dakar-Niger, je pense que ça réglait beaucoup de problèmes. Voilà le genre d'action qu'il nous faut. Les gens ont tout de suite interpellé par rapport au transport intra-africain et qui pose des problèmes. Donc, pour ECOWAS également, à ce niveau, il est important que ECOWAS commence à réfléchir sur comment sécuriser les routes de l'intégration. C'est-à-dire que quand on a les routes, on a les autoroutes, il faut les sécuriser. Et donc voilà en fait ce que je voulais dire pour intervenir. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. General Faye. Right, Aleida Borges, you have 1 minute to make your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, so my name is Aleida Borges, and I'm based at the African Leadership Center. So I'm going to agree that regional integration is essential for the present and future of Africa, and I'm a big fan of regional integration. But as we sit here celebrating 50 years of ECOWAS, we in Cabo Verde are celebrating 50 years of independence, so we are still trying to figure out who we are after 500 years of Portuguese dominance. We are one of the smallest and least populated countries in ECOWAS, and so for us, sometimes ECOWAS feels like a club of English and French-speaking countries led by the giant of Africa, Nigeria. So I believe, actually, that there are only 2 Portuguese-speaking individuals here at this meeting. So it's not very clear for such a small country with a small population, with our own problems of regional integration, trying to connect 10 islands, what ECOWAS has to offer to us. So that is the observation I wanted to leave with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. We have Ambassador Shehu Abdullahi. Can you please take the mic? Okay, it's over there. Thank you, sir. And after him, we have Professor Chris Isike to take his contribution. In 1 minute, sir. Thank you.
Bonjour, madame. Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais dire que...
Can you hear me? Yeah, please speak. Let's see if it works. No, it's not working. It's not working, sir.
Okay.
So, sorry, you took my list. Can you try again? Let's see if it's okay now.
Hello?
Hello, sir.
Vous m'entendez?
Comment t'appelles-tu?
Babacar Mbaye. Ambassadeur Mbaye.
Great. Go on.
Allô?
Hello, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Oui, je voudrais dire que l'Afrique, et en particulier notre région, est en train de se mobiliser pour que le multilatéralisme prévale dans le traitement des questions qui nous tiennent à cœur sur la scène internationale. Et dans cette mobilisation-là, si nous voulons être efficaces et crédibles, il nous faut être exemplaires dans la solidarité entre nous. Et l'intégration est un des moyens de manifester la solidarité entre nous. Donc pour dire que l'intégration nous est indispensable si nous voulons être efficaces sur la scène internationale dans le combat que nous menons pour faire prévaloir le multilatéralisme. C'est là que je voulais amener comme contribution. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Well, I was saying that the two positions have been canvassed with passion, but I could see that Dr. Ajayi wanted us to abolish the state and create an anarchy, because Dr. Afolabi has drawn your attention to the Westphalian arrangement. We can therefore build consensus around the wisdom expressed by Professor Abdullahi Batili, that organizations are important, but there are challenges. Those challenges that Dr. Ajayi identified were not created by the institutions, they were created by other actors. So the first step is to recognize the important role of non-state actors and create a space for them. Once we create a space for them, they can now fit into the consensus that have been proposed by Professor Batili. Thank you very much.
Yeah, to the microphone. He's there, Ambassador. Oh, sorry about that. After him, we will take Ifeanyi Okechukwu, Clement Sefa Nyako, Professor Aziz Olaniyo, Dr. Hakim Jamil, Professor Kehinde Olayode, in that particular order. Say that again. Sorry. Say that again.
No groupings are key to integration, in my view. But to make ECOWAS indispensable, it must pivot from signing protocols to ECOWAS has the treaties for free movement, but its internal trade is still choked by bottlenecks, and as you have heard, it has massive border delays. The problem isn't a lack of rules. It's a lack of operational machinery to back those rules up. ECOWAS could look to my part of the world, East Africa, and the Northern Corridor on how this can be done. The Northern Corridor success wasn't built on another summit or on another corridor meeting. It was built on two things. One, dedicated management, and two, data-driven accountability. Northern Corridor established a permanent secretariat focused solely on logistics and burdened by broader politics, and crucially, they use a performance monitoring system to publicly track border clearance times, which forces national customs and police agencies to meet regional targets, and this has dramatically cut transit times for thousands of trucks traveling between Kenya's port of Mombasa and the hinterland. And I think that ECOWAS could benefit from this type of model in terms of showing it values people.
Thank you.
Lastly, just one tiny point. It could also be a move away from just policies and dedicate these management agencies so that a corridor like Lagos-Abuja is actually funded. There's data to prove its efficiency and efficacy and show tangible profit to the people of West Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So I skipped Professor Chris Isike earlier. So you have the mic now and you have 1 minute. Let's do this.
All right, thank you very much. So for questions like this, I normally would go to a reading of pre-colonial African history. And based on that reading, I would support both motions. I would say that both motions are correct. And this point has been articulated by Dr. Akilu and Professor Jega already, but I came out just because they didn't see the reasons why they are supporting both motions. And it's simply that this is not new. Integration has always taken place in Africa, pre-colonialism, based on institutions, deep-rooted institutions and cultures and norms that facilitated that. And they were both state and people-driven. And if you want to understand, ECOWAS has always existed in the Mande Kingdom in Mali, the Ashanti Kingdom in Ghana, Yoruba Kingdom, the Great Zimbabwe, right? All of these are state structures, unions of states, but they were both state and people-driven. So let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's simply go back to how we used to do it and we'll get it right.
Thank you, Professor Sike. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Yeah. Is that Ifeanyi Okechukwu?
Yes, please.
Excellent.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, speakers, as well. I think I will support the position of the regional integration and regional institutions working hand in hand. A house that is leaking does not suggest that we should discountenance issues around house. Shelter is important to us. We shouldn't deny that shelter is important, is not important because a house is leaking. Why I say this is because when you look at the modern society, and I think Professor Jega also talked about that, the interdependency of modern society, the relationship between the state and society is key. And then also the globalization process, the way that our societies and states are shaped, requires that states work together and also find ways of regulating themselves as well. And the only way you could do this is also to have some kind of a multilateral operation. And multilateral operation only can be possible only when you have some kind of regional institution, regional mechanism, call it whatever you want. But in our own understanding, it's reflected in the way that ECOWAS works. So for us to be able to exist, to progress, to develop, to address issues that we have that seems to overlap within our society, you need regional organizations to work.
Thank you, Ifeanyi Okechukwu. We need a multilateral operation through regional institutions. That's brilliant there. Clement Seifa Nyako, then Professor Aziz Olaniyo, Dr. Hakeem Jamil, Professor Kehinde Olayode, yeah, in that particular order.
Okay, thank you. Really good questions there. And I'm really conflicted whether regional integration is necessary, because on the one hand, we have regional organizations like, I'm conflicted whether regional organizations are necessary for regional integration. I guess that's the point. Because on the one hand, we have regional bodies like ECOWAS, SADC that are doing great things, but like Penda and others have said, cannot be seen in the lives of ordinary people. And so the question is, to what extent do we see those are necessary for regional integration when we want the whole of Africa to be integrated rather than bits and pieces of elites integrated and sitting around tables here? But also on the other hand, there are a few communities that do not form neatly into the countries as we have, so that if you say countries should form regional integration, it will be almost impossible. And I have a few of those in the gray areas in mind, like stateless people, people who are on the fringes and margins of society, who don't even have passport or don't identify with any country, not because of any doing of theirs, but because of things of war and mobilities and things that just put people in the middle there. We also have some communities like the sometimes LGBT communities and others who don't often have their interests represented nicely by countries. And so we want to see where those, so I guess my final point is that I'm conflicted, and either way, there has to be a way that the interests of those at the margins are considered. Thanks.
Okay, so Clement is conflicted. Well, Professor Aziz Olanio.
Thank you very much. Okay, yeah. The problems facing humanity are actually supranational, that is, beyond the powers of each state. And so for this problem to be resolved, the states must come together, mobilize the citizens to achieve the goal. And you cannot do this without the kind of platform. And that is why regional organizations are very, very important. As you can see that ECOWAS have been responding to some of the challenges, such as migration, human trafficking, drug issue, corruption, poverty, conflict, etc. So in addressing these issues by ECOWAS, some problems have also emerged. Like the case of ECOWAS protocol of nation, it has allowed some various elements to cross borders. So, but the solution to that is not to abolish the regional organizations. And to me, the best way is to strengthen these organizations so as to address the problems that keep emerging. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So states must come together and mobilize their citizens using the platform that ECOWAS has provided. Thank you very much for that contribution. Dr. Hakeem Jamil.
Thank you so much. My own contribution will be how to reconcile the issue of insurgency, banditry, and terrorism with integration and cooperation in West African states. As an earlier speaker said, that is Hajar Sarambe. She said there can be no integration without peace. This is the bitter truth. The reality of insecurity has made regional bodies necessary in the concerning terrorism and banditry with integration and cooperation in West African states. Integration and cooperation cannot be left to float without regulation by regional bodies, especially in this era of insecurity. This requires a motivated approach that addresses the root causes of these security challenges, while fostering regional collaboration. There should be strategies to tackle poverty, unemployment, lack of educational opportunities, governance, and corruption. A regional body like ECOWAS can do more through intelligence sharing, joint operations, and economic initiatives. And there are examples of successful regional initiatives like the Multinational Joint Task Force, which has been effective in conducting joint operations against Boko Haram and its offshoots in the Lake Chad region. Also, there are regional initiatives that has helped integration, like the Accra Initiative, which has improved intelligence sharing and has improved security. ECOWAS Standby Force, which have performed well in restoring order in countries like Liberia, Gambia, and Sierra Leone. We only need to strengthen this to make them more functional through political will and by tackling the internal crisis of member states, especially the threatening problem of insecurity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hakeem Jamil. Thank you for your contribution. Professor Kehinde Olayode, then Ojobo Ode Ataluku. Professor Kehinde Olayode. All right, so can we have Ojobo Ode Ataluku? Then
I just want to thank the organizers for this very interesting debate. And I want to look at it from a global perspective, especially the current challenge to institutionalism, especially the rise of populism and the strong men in politics, as we've seen in the United States of America, in China, Turkey, India, Russia, and elsewhere. I think it is important for ECOWAS to strategize. My fear is, can ECOWAS survive in the face of ongoing challenges and onslaught to institutionalism and the undermining of the institutional arrangement that was set at the end of the Second World War. And I absolutely agree with the position of Dr. Afolabi. While the Westphalian structure is the current framework of international relations, but then we can see the surging and the creeping threats from populism. And it is important for ECOWAS to design some homegrown challenges to be able to survive in the next decade. Thank you.
Thank you. Or Professor Kehinde Olayode, thank you very much for your contribution, and you're concerned that unless ECOWAS re-strategizes, it may not be able to survive in the face of the ongoing onslaught on institutionalism. Thank you for your contribution. Let me invite Ojobo Ode Ataluku, Dr. Sylvanus Wekeja.
Thank you very much. My name is Ojobo Ode Atuluku. And my position is that nothing is ever black or white. Indeed, there are shades of gray linking both colors all the time. The question is, are regional organizations a necessity for regional integration? And my answer is no. They are not a necessity, but they are desirable for coordination and facilitation, but must maintain relevance even within those rules. I hold that with the deepening fragmentation, the loss of credibility, especially in enforcement of democratic norms in states that would call themselves democracies, the frustrations of citizens turning into anger against fellow Africans of other countries, the preference for bilateral deals and sectoral cooperation, all these lead to the emerging momentum for a reconstituted West African Union in architecture that recognizes political variation, models, including robust citizen participation, both locally within each country as well as across the sub-region, bound on specific functional areas such as trade, digital, climate, and security coordination, offering pathways of integration that works for the people and not for democracy's dictators, protecting their leadership turf. Relevance for the people's rights and welfare is the ground foundation on which such a union must be based. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, ma'am, for your contribution. So I'm going to call up the last speaker because we are really running out of time. Wekesa. Yeah, so I have a Wekesa here.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, so take the mic in 1 minute. If you can do it in less, I'll be very happy.
Okay, thank you. I want to agree with Dr. Ajay that sometimes it questions what if regional economic communities are important. But I will use the lessons of the East African community perhaps to forewarn our partners in the ECOWAS that what we're experiencing within the East African community is what I call the negative integration, where we have member states governments who are trying to claw back some of the normative frameworks placed around by the regional economic communities. Take, for example, the free movement of persons. Governments in East Africa are engaging in some transnational authoritarianism where member states abduct at will, cross-border abductions across the member states, where one member state can walk into another and abduct a government critic. Yesterday, in the aftermath of the Tanzanian elections, contested elections, for the first time we saw Tanzanian security agencies shooting at Kenyans, trying to cross to demonstrate against the electoral fraud in Tanzania. So the regional economic communities need to be aware that as much as they're placing these frameworks on free movement of people, labor, and what have you, they are not in sync with what the government in power is thinking around that time. So for us to achieve that positive integration, we as a society and the framers of these protocols and agreements need to be cognizant to the fact that it is not good for everyone to support it. So ECOWAS, it's a wake-up call. You need to be looking at what is happening in the East African community, because sooner or later it's going to catch up with you. Thank you.
There's a wake-up call for ECOWAS there. Thank you, Wakesa, for your contribution. Right. So by every standard, I want to say that the Africa Public Square debate with the team future-proofing regional integration has been a huge success. Don't you think so? So if you think so, put your hands together for everybody who has been a part of it, who has made it happen, from our key debaters and everybody who has come to the podium, Professor Fumi Olani Shaki, Professor Abdullahi Bathili, Dr. Titilope Ajayi, Dr. Fasal Garba Mohammed, Afalabi, and everybody who has made this to invite Professor Metani Tadase.
Organizations, in this case ECOWAS, fit for purpose? I think that's the real question. And in that case, we need to define the purpose. In order to define and identify the identity of, the purpose itself requires also understanding the challenges, the global challenges in this case. I think the global changes are displaying unsettling implications to regional organizations, to states, and citizens. And the problem starts with lack of realization that Africa's regional organizations, including ECOWAS, lacked the realization that the sands were shifting. The global order was shifting. The normative framework that has powered regional organizations in the first place is shaking. I think that lack of realization has costed them, which means they were unaware of the ramifications. And two, because of the changes, we have an expansion of restrictive money, finances, for peacemaking or conflict resolution is shrinking. Values are shrinking. What in such a situation? Multilateralism is in a back foot. What we see now is the operating framework has also shifted. The focus now is mainly the global north and major powers is to deal with each specific countries as separate issues. When regional approach is sorely needed, and this is happening. We are facing what I call as extractive mediation, where a global power forces ceasefires, maybe fake peace agreements, for rents, to collect rents. This is new. The political economy is shifting. The global political economy affecting Africa. I might consider this as post-liberal conquest. I'm deliberately saying post-liberal because some call it recognize all the liberal process and institutions. All is for grabs. Land, minerals, everything, including data mining, including sovereignty, political sovereignty. So, maybe some say, this is not new. Of course, yeah. Africa was colonized, plundered, yes, it's not new. But it's new in one aspect. The crudeness of this exploitative dynamics is new, at least since the end of the Cold War. In terms of its crudeness, its bluntness. So that is the question. It's new in that regard. So the realization comes here. We have been entering the post-Cold War period, and yet we have been operating and thinking as if we are in a post-Cold War period. Violence is becoming the defining economic logic. Violence, in many respects. Regional organizations are silenced coercively. I can give you the example of the DRC-Rwanda deal, you know. African governments asked Marco Rubio to cite the role and participation of regional organizations in the deal. They refused it. It will reduce, you know, the branding of the deal by Trump. So what is happening is that the situation is worsening even for Africa's regional organization because this is being achieved by weaponizing wars, conflicts, weak statehood and sovereignty, and fragility. This is being weaponized. So, circling back to the question, are regional organizations fit for purpose? Well, the problem is that they are not due to lack of organizing, clearly defined organizing principles, be it in the economic sense. What is the coal and steel of West Africa? Is it minerals? Is it agriculture? You cannot have Uber Eats type of list and, you know, just anchor your whatever, you know, regional integration. You have to identify that. In terms of the political community, what is that? So the point is that if there is any logic behind these organizations, I'm sure there are many, it hasn't been well thought through. I think that's the main issue here. All this means is that thinking beyond strengthening existing regional organizations or the revival of RECs is the most important issue, as crucial as they may be right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it has been a wonderful debate. The rapporteur team was monitoring those who support the necessity for regional organization, those who are against, and those who are for. So according to the report before me here, those who are indifferent, 6, those who are against, 2, and those who are in support, 15. So, as we say in the Nigerian parliament, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. So, I will ask the panelists to just step forward for photograph. Where's our photographer? Quickly. Step forward for photograph along with the moderator. And then we've been battling whether we should just continue or we should have a short tea break. What do you think? Short break. But with the commitment that you will all come back in 15 minutes. Do we agree to that? Do we agree to that? Okay, so short tea break. There are 2 service points. Downstairs, if you go to downstairs, one to your left if you are a leftist, then one to your right if you are a rightist. Then the Eged, you take the guests to their tea break. Please come back in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Thank you.